How are you? Welcome to the Franchise Show. I hope you're all doing well and you've had a good week in franchising. I've had a lovely week, although I'm still deaf in one ear. Selective hearing, my wife says, but hopefully that will get better, and I can hear out of this one, so that's okay. Um, so where do we always start? We always start by explaining the premise of the show. And the premise of the franchise show is to create a safe space and an environment for discussion and debate all around franchising. The show is about franchising. If you're a franchisee, if you're a franchisor, if you're an entrepreneur looking for ways to scale your business, then these conversations can inspire the sort of things that you should or possibly could be thinking about. It's not necessarily to answer questions, it's sometimes to create those questions. So, what do? Each week we take a different topic and we have a lovely guest. And my goodness, this week is no exception. And in fact, it is an exception because we have a legend of a guest today. So, the topic today, talking of legends, is franchise legends. And apart from the fact that my lovely guest today is a franchise legend, we're also going to be talking about some of the myths and the legends and the misinterpretations and the things that people think about franchising that perhaps aren't quite true. So we're going to have a bit of a delve into those and see where we go. So I'd love to introduce my wonderful guest today. My guest today is John Hewitt. I mean, he really needs no introduction. John has been in franchising for 54 years, more time than I've been on the planet, just. So it's going to be an incredible conversation. Also, I have a little bit of beard envy going on here, but I'm working on it. I'd just like to hand things over to you, John, initially, just to give yourself a little bit of an introduction and let people know this incredible history and where you've been and where you are.
Well, thank you for having me, and it's a great pleasure. And I'm going to take you back 55 years when I started in franchising. I was blessed. I was going to the University of Buffalo to be a mathematician, and I don't have any clue what a mathematician would do looking back. But I took an H&R Block course, a tax course, loved it, and found my life's calling. And I started in the tax business working part-time while I was in college. 12 years later, I was running 250 H&R Block location. I was one of the top executives at Block. And my dad was the CFO of a public company. And Harvey, you're not old enough to remember a world without computers, but
just about.
He had a big room-sized computer that with literally bells and whistles that was running his public company. And he bought one of the little Apple computers by mail, and he liked it better than the mainframe that was running his company. So he decided in 1981 that we should build tax software. So we both quit our jobs and built the first tax software for an Apple computer. No one wanted it, way ahead of its time. Got blessed again and found a company in Virginia Beach, Virginia, that called Mel Jackson. And Mel had died. We bought 6 offices from his widow. The biggest blessing was the weather in Virginia Beach is a lot nicer than in Buffalo. So in August of 82, I moved my family here, and we merged the software company with Mel Jackson. We changed the name to Jackson Hewitt. We went public and grew it to 15 years, sold it for $483 million. Wow. I had a 3-year non-compete, but it didn't cover Canada because Jackson Hewitt was not in Canada, never has been. And I had grown up in Buffalo, so I knew the Canadian tax system. So we opened Liberty Tax in Canada, and within 3 years became a top 100 retail chain. So now I'd founded the 23rd largest retail chain in the United States, Jackson Hewitt, and I founded Liberty Tax Canada, top top 50 largest retail chain in Canada. And when my non-compete ended in 2000, came back to the United States. And now I had to compete with my own name, my own people, my own system, my own software. And yet not only did we grow faster than Jackson Hewitt, we grew faster than them and H&R Block combined. We had an amazing 12 years. We opened virtually a franchisee a day. We opened 4,000 in 12 years. Top 10 fastest growing franchisor ever. Again, one of the top 100 retail chains in the United States. I'm the only one that's founded 2 of the top 100 retail chains in the United States. Of course, I did it in Canada too. And again, public company, again, worth $500 million, sold my stock. And now for the last 5 years, I've been founded and run Loyalty Brands, which has 8 different franchise systems. So I had 1 at Block, 1 at Jackson Hewitt, 1 at Liberty, and now we have 8 different brands. So that's my 55-year career in a nutshell.
Wow. I mean, unbelievable. And it's such a pleasure to have you here on the show and to find out some of those little gems that you've discovered over that huge and varied career. You mentioned there about Loyalty Brands, where you're at now, and that you've got a few brands there. How does that compare to sort of doing, the tax brands in the past? Do you find that a more interesting or a different experience?
It's certainly different, and focus is a really good thing. And when people talk to me and ask my advice about how to build their career, build their life, build their wealth, I say focus, focus, focus. So initially you should focus. And because when you diversify, to me, you become average. And so even in our 8 brands, we have 2 that are just growing extremely rapidly. And one, of course, is in tax, and it's ATAX, which is ATAX is growing faster than Liberty and Jackson Hewitt and H&R Block. But even faster growing is, I fell in love with the pet industry. The mobile grooming of pets is amazing. So we have, it's called Zoomin Grooming. And
Okay.
we go to sit in people's driveways or outside in the road with our beautiful van and groom their pets. And that's growing by incredible numbers.
Wow. Amazing. Before we get into the conversation a little deeper, I just want to recognize a few people who have joined us early on today. So we've got the lovely Natalia. Really looking forward to your thoughts on perhaps some of the misconceptions you've experienced in your career. So please feel free to make a comment where you can today. We've got Sanjay here today. Great to have you here, Sanjay. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. We have the lovely Tim Morris here. Tim's going to be a guest on the show coming up, I think, in June. Great to have you here. He's here with us in the UK, so looking forward to hearing your thoughts. We have Jitin. I had a lovely conversation with Jitin, and it's interesting, actually, John, you said there about focusing on a speciality. That was one of the topics that I was talking to Jitin about. So I think it's going to be a real learning for everybody here. But please, Jitin, feel free to ask any questions or make any comments, and we'll bring them into the conversation where we can. We've got the ever wise Simon Wise. He likes that play on words. Great to have you here, Simon. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. And we have the wonderful Don Cohen. Don Cohen taught me everything that I know about doing LinkedIn Live. So if you like what I do, please check out his wonderful show. It's before this one, and it's every day. at 11 o'clock Eastern time. So please check that out. And it's fantastic to have you here. We've got a couple of good questions that have come up from Simon. So if it's okay with you, John, I'd like to bring these up, if that's okay. Let's have a little look. What do you think will be the biggest growth sectors in franchising globally? Is there some areas that you think are going to really expand? I mean, you've had this amazing experience of growing these industries. What do you think the next big thing might be?
Well, to be frank, I'm not a global expert. So I will give you the United States, and I'm an expert on the United States.
Let's talk the USA for now.
Mostly an expert in my brands. So cool. I'm kind of, in a way, I'm tunnel vision that I'm so fanatically obsessed with competition that I tend not to go globally. Although we have franchises in 14 countries, my focus is U.S. So I can answer that in U.S. That there are certain industry that to me are ripe for expansion and quicker growth. And certainly in the United States, every day, and this is going to continue for the next 6 or 7 years, 10,000 people turn 65. So elder care is certainly going to continue to thrive and grow rapidly. Secondly, I've learned to love the pet industry, that everything pet. I mean, it's amazing that all the growth in this industry over the last 5 years, and every expert I read is expecting it to double again over the next 6 or 7 years. So the pet industry is going to thrive for sure. And then there are other industries that like our roofing and siding and water restoration and home improvement. I mean, all kinds of home care is going to continue to grow with the needs of the population. But when I think about fast growth, those are the industries that I think of that have the least competition and the most room to grow, at least over the next 5 to 7 years. If you look out longer than that, it's almost impossible. Technology changes over the decades. Tesla's only been a big thing for the last 5 or 6 years. 5 or 6 years ago, 90% of Americans never heard of the word Tesla. And now look at it. So I tend to think of things in 5-year increments. If I could think of 3, it would be pets, number 1, 2 is elder care, and 3 is home care.
Have you got any pets yourself? Now I'm going to ask this because I've got a cat. He'll probably jump up and join us at some point.
Awesome. I don't. And it's one of the main reasons is it would be unfair. I travel 2 or 3 days a week, and I don't feel it's fair to a pet. And I'm often gone from my home for 12 hours a day. So I just don't think that's fair to the animal.
No, I think you're absolutely right, and it's a wise thing to do. That's really interesting to hear your sort of thoughts. I think here in the UK, we look sometimes towards America for the trends, because I think sometimes in some respects you're ahead of things. You've been in franchising as a nation longer than we have, so it's always really. It's why this show is very much a UK, US audience base. And it's really interesting to hear your thoughts on what might be the next big thing. Elderly care. We're all living longer and we're living better quality lives into, later life. And therefore that elderly care is really, really key and really important. But it's interesting to hear about that pet industry as well. Let's have a look at another comment by Simon. What's Simon put here? Oh, now this is a good one. Having been in the industry for as long as you have, I mean, did you have a mentor? I don't think I know of anybody who's been in the industry longer than you. But who was your franchising inspiration, I suppose? A very good question, Simon.
Yeah, as far as franchising, I really didn't have a mentor. I sort of half jokingly tell my team, and I brought in 5,200 franchisees in my career, and I've also had CEOs of other franchise organizations that I do mentor, and some of them report to me. But I tell them I didn't have me to help me when I was growing up, and Harvey, there's no school in the United States of how to be a CEO, how to be a franchise leader, and that's a different skill set. And when we talk about myths and legends later, it's a different skill set running a franchise organization than a normal organization. So my mentor was a school of hard knocks. And they say that the people who are the most successful have made the most mistakes. So I learned my mentor was all the mistakes that I made and all the ones that I've seen.
Absolutely. What a great answer to that question as well. Your mentor being your mistakes. I think people can have that one as very much a takeaway. Very quickly, if you've just joined us today, this is the Franchise Show, and we are talking franchise legends and myths with the legend himself, Mr. John T Hewitt. One of the things that I wanted to ask you actually. You've had such an amazing, successful career, and you could surely and very easily retire, but you've chosen to really give back, to do things like this and to impart that knowledge and mentor other people. I imagine that's a really important thing for you to continue to do.
Yeah, I saw it totally surprised me. I was trolling through Facebook and I saw Denzel Washington. And Denzel Washington said, the most selfish people on the planet are, and I couldn't wait to hear what he said. And he said, the people that give back and help others. And I said, what? And he said, because they're so happy. They're so, they're so just gratified. And for some people, certainly for me, when I was a kid, I thought I'd make millions. I knew I was going to make millions of dollars, and I thought I'd retire. And then I realized that what else would I do? Helping people and giving back is more rewarding than anything. People like myself, I'm bringing in over 5,000 franchises with 1,000 millionaires, and they had hundreds of thousands of employees. I've changed tens of thousands of people's lives, and I do every day. And to go sit on a beach somewhere with all my knowledge and all of my experience and all of my wisdom that I've learned and not to share it. I mean, God didn't bless me I've been incredibly blessed. God didn't bless me to just go sit somewhere. I need to give back. It's to whom much is given, much is expected.
No, that's a lovely thing to say, and really important as well. And there is joy to be found in giving back and raising others up around you, and if you can learn the talent of raising others up and nurturing and cultivating others, and you then surround yourself with wonderful people that you're bringing up, it's a very enjoyable experience. We've got a few other comments. Before we get to those, the topic today is myths and legends. So I thought it's probably time to start getting into a few of these. What do you, in your experience, what have been some of the common misconceptions about franchising, and how do we perhaps start to go about dispelling those misconceptions?
Sure. There are two big misconceptions about franchising that I'll say there are two very large things. And one is that it's a good thing to do, that I'm a mom and pop, I have a successful restaurant or lawn care business, whatever it is. and I should franchise it. And so that's when people ask me if they should franchise, I say no. Because what people don't understand is that most franchisors fail. In the United States, for the last 10 years, 10 years ago, there were 4,000 franchisors. For the last 10 years, they've added over 400 new franchisors a year. So that's 4,000 more. So there should be 8,000 franchisors, but today there are 4,000 franchisors. Okay. Most franchisors don't make it. Mm-hmm. So the biggest myth is it's a good thing to do. No, it's very difficult to do. And I can take time and go through that if at length. But the second myth is it costs less to build the business on my own than to acquire a franchise. Why should I pay a franchise X number of dollars? And what people don't understand in that case is what you get when you get a good franchise, when you get a high quality franchise, you get a system of doing business. And the cost of building a business costs two things: time and money. You save all kinds of time and all kinds of money by having a system instead of going and inventing the system yourself and making all the mistakes that we've already made. So those are the biggest two myths: that it's a great thing to do. It's not. And number two is I might as well do it myself. I could save 50 grand or 100 grand. Well, you're going to pay a lot more than that in all the mistakes and all the time you're spending developing your system in your business.
Absolutely. I mean, we've spoken a little bit today about mistakes, haven't we? And you said that mistakes were your mentor, and I really love that one. But you're right. When you're buying into a franchise, you're buying somebody else's mistakes that they've already made, and you're buying time. That's essentially the package of things that you're getting. They've already made those mistakes, and many of them. And in fact, the more mistakes someone's made, perhaps the better. I mean, mistakes are a positive thing. Great answer to that. Let's have a look at a few more comments that have come in here. We've got a long one here from Sanjay. Sanjay's put, great background, John, impressive CV. Well, yes, it is. Would welcome John's views on Gen Z, a 27 years plus, and whether or not there are any trends in the US of them taking an interest in franchising and becoming franchisees. Was at the recent International Franchise Show in London and did not really see much footfall from Gen Z. Before you take this one, John, I'd just like to jump in here because it's really passionate to me, actually, about getting younger people involved in franchising. I know the other franchising John. Can we talk of the other franchising John? But John Hayes is going to be a guest of the Titus Center, and I love what he does. I love the fact that he's encouraging younger people, and I'm going to have one of his students on as a guest. But what's your take on younger people in franchising and how we get that message out there?
Speaking of John Hayes, I was just on a podcast of his.
I know.
And I'm going to be speaking at his event, I think, for young people in January.
Great.
Down in West Palm Beach.
Fantastic.
So what has happened over the 55 years? When I started in franchising, the average franchisee that started was in there about 50. And then over the next 15 years, it came down to about 40. And then it came down to about low 30s, like 32, 33. And that period ended about 10, 15 years ago. And now there's a new trend that not a high percentage, but a good number of new franchisees are children who are financed by their parents. Many parents are beginning to understand, especially the ones that were entrepreneurs, are beginning to understand that leaving college and jumping into a career is not the way to wealth. It's not the way to happiness. And maybe their child is better suited to jump into franchising. So a high percentage of about 1 out of every 5 of our franchises today is a child financed by a parent, and they're always in their virtually always in their 20s, and they are and it's not always the child's choice. It's interesting that the parents try to push them into it, but yeah. So I would say that there are more younger people over the last 20 or 25 years that that there are a large group of franchisees from 27 to 37 that are joining us, and that's 50%ish, but we're also getting another 15 or 20% that are children, that are 20 somethings, that are children of wealthier parents, understanding that that's a good path for their child.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's great to see you and you know and John Hayes as well, really promoting and helping younger people understand what franchising is, understands where it can fit into the world of business and their careers, you know, and just trying to continue to promote that to a new generation. It's a wonderful and fantastic thing you're doing. So I thank you for that. Let's have a look at what Natalia's put here. This is where we were talking earlier about different trends and things that maybe are coming in the future. And she's put here, I'd probably add the children's sector to that, as parents tend to invest in their children. Are you seeing a big growth in the children's sector, you know, sort of dance or, you know, children's activities or singing or whatever it might be in the US? We certainly are here, I think.
You know, in every January in Entrepreneur magazine, they have a list of the top 500 ranked franchisors, and I looked for the biggest sectors with the most competition, and the most competition is children. In children, there's about 200 franchisors that are focused on children.
Wow. Wow.
So I haven't seen, in one of our school, well, I mean, it's a really feel-good franchisor. It's called Little Medical School. And it's so cute for me to see a class full of, we give them a white coat and a stethoscope. It's cute to see these little kids running around, and it's feel good. And I think that more of them will become doctors and nurses because they took our course. So, it's not something that's not going to grow. It's not one of the 3 sectors I would have picked.
No, it's very interesting. You know, a great point and something that's interesting to think of. Let's have a little look. We've got a comment here, and I'd like to bring this one up because your extensive background going back so far in the US. You must be one of the only people who can have perhaps a balanced view on this, because when you were starting out, I'm sure things were less regulated in the USA than they are currently. So what's your take on regulation and how it is in the US? You know, do you think that's a help or a hindrance? Was it better, you know, going back when it was less regulated?
Yeah, in the United States, of course, to be a franchisor today, you have to give a prospect an FDD, a disclosure document, a federal disclosure document, a franchise disclosure document. Well, that didn't even exist until 1980. Before 80, it was a free-for-all. You didn't need to give them anything. And so there have been more and more and more regulation. And every time we see a new regulation, we cringe, right? We cringe, right? Because it means more work for us.
Yes.
But it actually is an advantage to the national players. Because, for example, they create you have to have a new license to be in an industry. Like in tax preparation, you have to have a new license. Everyone in the state of New York has to get this license. Well, it hurts the mom and pops more than the national players. I have 500 locations in New York. So I do it once. I create a system once with training and the course materials and the solve it one time. Every mom and pop has to go out and solve it one at a time. So it's a lot cheaper per location for me to solve government regulation than it is for a mom and pop. So it pushes mom and pops out of business, which creates bigger market share for us. And at the end of the day, in every industry, the people that pay for the government regulation and the extra costs is not the company, it's the consumer. So it costs the consumer money. It ends up not costing the company money, it costs the consumer money.
Because it's passed on down the line from franchisor to franchisee to consumer, or however it filters down. Yeah, it's really interesting your take on that as well, because as I say, you've got this unique experience of having a lot of experience before it was regulated and seeing how that regulation has come in. It perhaps serves as a barrier to entry to competition in some ways. You know, if you're an already established franchisee and someone new to the industry is wanting to come in, and they're having to deal with that regulation. So perhaps, like you say, it does protect those more established brands, rightly or wrongly. But an interesting take. What was your experience of things pre 1980 in the United States? You know, was it an interesting time, a more enjoyable time with less regulation, or do you think that regulation does as well help protect perhaps the industry a little bit more?
Yeah, I think it was more of a wild west, right? That if you were a non-scrupulous organization or person, you got away with things that shouldn't have got away with. So often, I mean, regulation, don't get me wrong, it's a nuisance, but it does help police the industry, does ensure a fairer opportunity for the consumer, and it usually stops the unscrupulous from taking advantage of consumers.
Yeah, a great point. And what we want is we want an industry where people are protected from people that are unscrupulous. You know, there are plenty of franchisors that even without regulation are just doing their best with ethical franchising. But yeah, it's always going to be a fascinating debate, that one. Let's have a look at a couple of comments. We've got one from Natalia and one from Jitten. So they're going to be coming up next. Let's have a look at what these are. So Natalia's put myth: buying a franchise business guarantees success. No, success is also dependent on the effort you put in and not just on the system provided by the franchisor. Would you agree that that's a myth, that people think, oh, it's a franchise, I don't have to do any work, I've bought this thing and all the work's going to be done for me?
Yes, two points on that. One is the best 10 two-letter words. If it is to be, it is up to me. So every franchisor has to understand that. If it is to be, it is up to them. But secondly, my job as a franchisor is to give you the best system in our industry. If I do my job, and I've been doing that for 55 years now, I just finished my 55th tax season, then your job is to follow that system. And Harvey, you would think that someone pays me money and has they have far less experience than me. Some have zero experience. And if I say to be open at 8 a.m. on April 7th, why would you be open at 8:30 or 9 or 10? Why would you think you know better? But out of the over 5,200 franchisees I brought in, not one has ever followed the system 100%. No. And if you don't, it's going to cost, as Natalie said, it's going to cost you time or money or both.
Absolutely. Before we move on to Jitin's question, I wanted to ask you a question. I mean, 5,200 franchisees is just an incredible number of people. And, you must have met so many characters, had so many stories, life-changing stories, I'm sure. Are there any that in that long career stick out to you as somebody whose life has been changed by franchising?
Oh, thousands, tens of thousands. I mean, I could tell you story after story after story of almost some of them are life-saving stories, not just life-changing stories. But one thing to keep in mind is when you change someone's from who has a net worth of, let's say, 150,000, and now they get into the millions. They're worth $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. You don't just change them; you change their children and their children's children. You change generations of their family. So it's an amazing journey. And I can tell you story after story of people went from nothing to wealthy. And the good things, they paid it forward. I love the phrase "pay it forward" in the movie. Pay it forward.
Yes, definitely. I mean, to try and help other people. And like you say, franchising has got these tiers of where you're helping different people. If you're a franchisor, you're helping the franchisees and their families and their generations of families. You're helping the employees of those franchisees. And hopefully you're helping the customers that are getting a good service. So it's a really rewarding industry to be in if you do it right. Just very quickly, while we're here, Simon Wise has just come in with "Love a Great Story." And absolutely, I love a great story as well. And it's time to name drop our other show, which is on a Thursday, and it's Franchising Brand Stories. And this is where we get behind the brands. We understand the stories behind those brands, and it goes beyond those brochures and the numbers, and we just try and understand what those stories are. I'm going to very quickly, if you scan the QR code now, that takes us to our lovely website, and you can find out all about that. So let's have a little look at a comment here by Jitin. So Jitin has put, "John, firstly, what a magical journey in the world of franchising you've portrayed. Well done on giving back and passing your wisdom. What have you found to be the biggest pain points in franchising? And what are your top tips for franchise retention?" Great question, Jitin. What do you make of that one, John?
Yeah, the biggest pain point is that people don't, again, they don't listen, they don't follow advice. And you would think that it would be automatic that they would follow advice. Out of the 5,200 franchisees I brought in, 1,000 millionaires, and 1,000 have gone out of business. The 1,000 millionaires listen 98 or 99% of the time. The people that go out of business that don't make it at all, they listen less than 90% of the time. So it comes down to how much you listen. And you would think that'd be automatic, but human beings can't listen. They don't listen to their parents. They don't listen to their teachers. They don't listen to anyone. They go through periods, and I mean, it's just against human nature. And they say smart people learn from their mistakes. And I don't know that many smart people, but the real better part of that is smart or wise people learn from the mistakes of others. And there are as few smart people there's far less wise people. So it comes down to simply following the system. And then a second part of that is people are allergic to change. And every person I know of any consequence says, "I want to improve." Every person is, "I want to improve." In fact, our mission statement at Jackson Hewitt was, part of it was improve each day, have some fun, and improve each day. And one year I had an epiphany. I asked my team. I said, what was the major improvement you made in the last 12 months? And they were like, I read a book, or I took a course. They didn't change. People want to improve, but they're not going to change. And so the pain point is not changing, but the pain of change. If you're going to improve, and I have a lifelong commitment to improve, even at my age, I'm still committed to improve.
You're a young man there, John. What do you mean?
Well, thank you. But it's the pain of change is what people resist.
Yes, change is painful and change is uncomfortable, but I think, and I don't know if you agree with this, but opportunities rarely come from a place of comfort. You have to make those changes to discover and find these new opportunities, whether you're a franchisee or whether you're a franchisor or an entrepreneur. Accept those changes, be flexible and malleable, and really embrace them. In case you've just joined us today, this is the Franchise Show, and we are talking today to John Hewitt, and we're talking about franchise legends because he is a legend. I will quickly say, because of the lovely QR code that's on the screen and my beautiful avatar below, if you would like to sponsor the show, please scan the QR code that's on the screen now, and that will take you to the website so you can find out how to do that. John, I was going to ask you a question about any surprises that you've come across in franchising. Sometimes, I think we've spoken about mistakes and different things that happen, but has there been a story or something that happened in franchising that really surprised you over the years?
I'm continually surprised by people, that even though people learn lessons, they don't change. For example, one of the things that we tested at Jackson Hewitt was we had a customer appreciation day, and on one Friday in March, when it was slow, when we weren't busy, it's a slow time of year for us in the tax preparation business. And on one Friday, we would do every tax return for free to give back. And one of my franchisees was totally against that. So the next door neighbor franchise put an article in the paper. We're going to do tax returns for free on Friday, March 7th. And she locked her office and wouldn't let anyone in. So the next year, the guy got an article again, and her support person called me up, and I said, tell her that I will pay her what she would have been paid for each return that she did. And so she ends up doing three customers come in. And I saw her that year at convention. I said, Lynn, how did it work? It was great. She said, one of the people had 3-year tax returns. So I gave them this year for free, and I charged for the 2 previous tax returns. And one of the people brought recommended their sister come in. So she came in and paid me. So I got 3 paid returns for the 3 free returns. So she saw how well it worked. Next year, same thing happens, get an article in the paper, and the consultant calls me up and says, guess what Lynn said? And I said, she asked if I was going to pay him again. And I said, no, she learned her lesson and she should be doing this for free. And of course, she locked her door. Even though she had seen it work with her own eyes. People are just stubborn and resistant of learning.
Absolutely. Now that's a fantastic story. It reminded me a little bit, actually, and I've put Carl's comment up here, which was a while ago, and he was talking about, he's put here, agree, more is learned from experiments gone wrong than gone right. I'm surprised how much I have learned this way, and I'm still learning. I put this up because Carl, he's a funding expert, and he often talks about funding and different ways of doing funding. One of those was crowdfunding. But when you do the crowdfunding, you give lots of things away for free. And because when those customers come in for their free, whatever it is, no matter what industry you're in, they might buy something else. They might bring a friend, but they're certainly going to start to become a loyal customer. I think it's very much that if you can have the attitude of trying to bring others up, trying to give back, and and level up, then it's you find that you get some wonderful things back in return. We're starting to come towards the end of the session today, but I'm gonna bring up a comment here from Simon. And this is an interesting one, and one I think that there's not many people qualified to answer this one. It's a good one to ask you. So, John, what makes a true franchise expert in the context of those that seek support franchisors in their growth and development? How do you answer that in terms of what makes a franchise expert, or does one exist?
Yes, and I mentioned before that there are most franchisors fail, and that was the common myth that they're all successful, and most fail, and they fail for one major reason, and then with a subset of that. And the major reason that they fail is they don't understand this. This should be obvious to all of your listeners and to every human being. And I just don't know why people don't get it. But it's one simple phrase: happy, successful franchisees. If you have happy, successful franchisees, you are unstoppable. You will grow by leaps and bounds. We opened 4,000 offices in 12 years at Liberty Tax, top 10 fastest growing ever. And because we had happy, successful franchisees. If you don't, you're going to fail. And most franchisors fail because they want happy, successful franchisor. And they don't understand the only way to get there. The only way to get there is to have happy, successful franchisees. It's that simple. But they draw up the agreement. They structure the deal in their own favor, which is natural, selfish, and inaccurate. They need to make sure if the franchisee makes money and I don't, it's not going to work. And if I make money and they don't, it's not going to work. But it's that simple, Harvey. I wish it was more complicated. But
I don't. I like the fact that it's simple.
Hundreds of franchisors fail each year because they don't understand happy, successful franchisees.
I think it's a very important phrase to remember. And I suppose being a franchise expert, or using that expression, if you can create a business where you have happy, successful franchisees, perhaps you can dip into that word and apply it to yourselves sometimes. But I think my view on it is, as a community of people, that's where the expertise comes in, and I think if we all bring each other up, nurture one another, and listen, as you very wisely said, John, to one another, then we become an expert community. And if we can raise ourselves up and make better choices and decisions, and have happy, successful franchisees, then that's certainly the way we should look at trying to go. You know what? I think I'd like to end it on happy, successful franchisees. It seems a lovely way to end. So I'd just like to thank you, John, for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I'd also like to thank everyone that's been here today. Your questions and comments, as ever, drive the discussion. I don't have anything written down at the beginning because we have an amazing community of people, and it just makes for an engaging and wonderful conversation. So I'd like to thank all of you, and I'd like to thank you, John. But before we go, I'd just like to give you a couple of minutes to to let our listeners and anybody who listens to this in the future, the best ways to get hold of you and to speak to you, or the best ways to speak to Loyalty Brands and your current business?
Yeah, it's simple. I'm on LinkedIn. I have 18,000 friends on LinkedIn. Loyaltybrands.com website, and I do a webinar of mentoring franchisees and franchisors and just business people in general once a week myself. So they can come on and ask me questions. They can connect with me on LinkedIn or loyaltybrands.com.
Fantastic. That's wonderful. I've also put a QR code up on the screen right now, and that very conveniently goes to John's website. So please scan that either now or in the future when you're listening, and that'll take you right to the place that you need to go. So we have now come to the end of today's wonderful session. It's been an amazing one. I've really enjoyed talking to you, John. I wanted to thank you again. A couple of things. So next week on the Franchise Show, so this is going to be next Tuesday, 5:15 GMT UK time, 12:15 EST. We have the wonderful Patrick Findaro. And he's going to be talking about E2 visas and franchising on YouTube as well. So it's going to be an interesting conversation there. Looking forward to that one. And also, please join us on Thursday, this coming Thursday. Again, same time, easy to remember, 5:15 GMT UK time, 12:15 EST for Franchising Brand Stories. And the story we're going to hear this week is Easy Storage. And they're part of the Easy family of brands. You might know a little orange airline, but we're going to have a fascinating conversation and really understand the stories and some of the characters behind that brand. So I'm really looking forward to that. So until next time, have a wonderful week ahead and take good care, everybody. Cheerio.